The rain hammered against my windshield as I pulled into the parking lot of Marcello's, the upscale Italian restaurant where my husband, David, claimed to be meeting an important client. I'd spent the entire day preparing his favorite lasagna for our 7th wedding anniversary, only to receive a text at 6 p.m. saying he had to work late. Again, something in my gut told me to drive across town and surprise him anyway. Maybe we could salvage what was left of the evening with a late dessert. Maybe I was being the spontaneous wife I used to be before our marriage became a routine of missed dinners and hollow conversations. I should have trusted that feeling in my gut for an entirely different reason. The moment I pushed through the restaurant's heavy oak doors, shaking rain from my coat, I saw them. Corner booth, dim lighting, wine glasses catching the candlelight. And David, my David, leaning across the table, his hand cradling another woman's face as he kissed her with an intensity one hadn't seen in years. Time seemed to fracture. The gentle piano music in the background became sharp and discordant. The warm restaurant suddenly felt suffocating. I stood frozen, watching my husband's hand slide down to the woman's shoulder, watching her smile against his lips before pulling back slightly. That's when his eyes found mine. The color drained from David's face so quickly I might have found it comical in any other circumstance. He jerked backward, nearly knocking over his wine glass. The woman, a striking brunette in an emerald dress I could never afford, followed his horrified gaze to where I stood, still clutching my purse like a shield. "Rachel," David stammered, practically leaping from the booth. "What are you? This isn't..." I found my voice, though it came out calmer than I felt. "Happy anniversary, darling." His face crumpled in what looked like genuine remorse, but I'd seen David negotiate business deals. I knew he could summon tears on command if the contract was important enough. "Rachel, please, let me explain." He rushed toward me, but I held up my hand. "Who is she?" The woman had remained seated, watching our exchange with an unreadable expression. Up close, I could see she was younger than me, maybe 28 to my 33. Professional makeup, expensive jewelry, the kind of woman who belonged in corner booths at places like Marcello's. "I'm Jennifer," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I work with David at..." "She's a coworker," David interrupted, his hand reaching for my arm. I stepped back. "Rachel, she just got some terrible news about her father. He's in the hospital," and she was devastated. I was comforting her, and she got emotional and kissed you. I finished, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. "It was a mistake," Jennifer said, standing now, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Patterson. I wasn't thinking clearly. My father's diagnosis, the stress, I shouldn't have put David in this position. They were good. I had to give them that." The synchronized story, the emotional manipulation, the way Jennifer's voice cracked at just the right moment. If I hadn't seen the way David had been touching her, hadn't witnessed the practiced intimacy of that kiss, I might have believed them. "Get in the car," I said to David. "Now." The drive home was silent except for the rain and David's occasional attempts at explanation, each one dying in his throat when I refused to respond. I gripped the steering wheel and stared at the taillights ahead, my mind replaying the kiss over and over, searching for details I'd missed. The next morning, I woke to an empty bed. David had spent the night in the guest room to give me space, though I suspected it was to give himself time to perfect his story. I found him in the kitchen, looking haggard, 2 cups of coffee already made. "I called in sick," he said quietly. "I thought we should talk." I took the coffee but remained standing. "Talk, then." For the next hour, David wove an elaborate tale of Jennifer's family crisis, how she'd been falling apart at the office for weeks, how he'd been trying to be a supportive colleague. The kiss, he insisted, had been entirely one-sided. He'd pulled away immediately, hadn't I seen that? He loved only me. It had been a terrible misunderstanding. I listened without interrupting, cataloging every detail, every emphasis, every place his eyes shifted left when I knew he looked right when telling the truth. "Okay," I said finally. He blinked. "Okay? I believe you." The lie tasted bitter, but I needed him to think I'd swallowed his story. "But David, if you're going to support her through this crisis, I need transparency. No more locked phones. No more late nights without explanations. Relief washed over his face. Of course, absolutely. Rachel, I'm so sorry you had to see that. I should have been more careful about your phone, I interrupted, holding out my hand. Unlock it and give it to me. The relief vanished, replaced by something that looked like panic before he caught himself. Rachel, come on. You said you believed me. Then you won't mind showing me. We stared at each other across the kitchen island. Finally, he pulled out his phone, typed in the password. He'd changed it from our anniversary date, I noted, and handed it over. I scrolled through his messages with Jennifer. They were professional, friendly, but nothing incriminating. Too clean, actually. I checked his call logs. Several calls to Jennifer, but they could have been work-related. His emails were similarly sanitized. See? David said, trying to smile. Nothing to worry about. But I'd lived with this man for 7 years. I knew when he was performing. And as I handed back his phone, I caught the slight relaxation in his shoulders, the way his breathing evened out. He'd been worried, then relieved. Which meant there was something to find. He'd just been smart enough to hide it. Over the next 3 days, I became someone I didn't recognize. I checked David's pockets before doing laundry. I looked through his car when he was in the shower. I even called Marcello's, pretending to inquire about a lost earring, and casually asked how long the couple in the corner booth had been there that night. Oh, the anniversary couple, the hostess had said cheerfully. They'd been here about 2 hours before the other lady arrived. They have that booth reserved every Thursday. Every Thursday. David's late client meetings happen every Thursday. My hand shook as I hung up. 2 hours before I arrived. A reserved booth. This wasn't a colleague comforting a distraught coworker. This was routine. This was an affair. But I'd promised myself I wouldn't confront him until I had irrefutable proof. David was a financial analyst, meticulous and careful. If I tipped my hand too early, he'd cover his tracks. The real breakthrough came on Monday. I'd taken a half-day from my job at the library, claiming a migraine. Instead, I drove to David's office building and waited. At 2:47 p.m., he emerged with Jennifer. They didn't touch, didn't even walk particularly close together, but they headed to the parking garage. I followed at a distance, watching as they got into David's car and drove to a hotel across town. Not a sleazy motel, David had too much pride for that, but a mid-range business hotel, the kind with weekly rates and minimal questions. My chest felt hollow as I watched them enter together. I sat in my car for exactly 90 minutes, crying until I had no tears left, then drove home and acted like nothing had happened when David returned at his usual time. How was work? I asked over dinner. Exhausting, he said, and I wondered if he could hear the double meaning. How's your headache? Better now, I lied. That night, while David slept, I carefully went through his wallet. Hidden behind his insurance card, I found a hotel receipt. Room 347. Checked in at 3 p.m., checked out at 5:15 p.m. 2 weeks ago. A Thursday. I photographed it with my phone and returned everything exactly as I'd found it. Then I lay awake until dawn, planning my next move. I hired a private investigator on Tuesday. His name was Marcus Webb, a former police detective with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach. I showed him everything I'd gathered, the photos from Marcello's, the hotel receipt, my notes on David's changing patterns. I need to know the truth, I told him. All of it. The truth has a way of being worse than we imagine, Marcus warned. Are you sure you're ready? I wasn't sure of anything anymore, but I nodded. Marcus worked fast. Within a week, he'd compiled a dossier that made my blood run cold. Jennifer Ross wasn't just a coworker having an affair with my husband. She was a financial consultant David had met at a conference 8 months ago. They'd been seeing each other regularly since then, hotel rooms, Weekend business trips that I'd never questioned, even a vacation to Miami that David had claimed was a solo fishing trip with college friends. But the affair itself wasn't the worst part. "Your husband has been moving money," Marcus said, sliding a folder across the table at the coffee shop where we'd agreed to meet. "Small amounts at first, but it's been escalating. In the last 3 months, approximately $47,000 has disappeared from your joint accounts." The number hit me like a physical blow. "Where?" "An account in Jennifer's name. He's been transferring funds incrementally, $500 here, $1,200 there, nothing large enough to trigger automatic alerts, but it adds up." Marcus tapped the papers. "I also found lease documents. He and Jennifer signed a rental agreement for an apartment downtown. Move-in date is next month." I couldn't breathe. "He's leaving me. It appears he's been planning to for a while. And he's trying to do it with as much of your money as possible." Marcus's expression softened. "I'm sorry, Rachel. But there's more." I almost laughed. What could possibly be worse? The account where he's depositing the money? It's not just in Jennifer's name. It's specifically structured to be difficult to trace back to him. If you divorce and his assets are examined, this money would appear to be Jennifer's. There are also documents suggesting he's been undervaluing his stock options and hiding some freelance consulting income. "He's been planning this," I whispered. "Systematically stealing from me while my voice broke." Marcus gave me a moment before continuing. "There's one more thing. I followed Jennifer yesterday. She met with a divorce attorney. Based on the conversation I overheard, and before you ask, yes, it's admissible if we need it, they were discussing strategies for a contested divorce. Your divorce, Rachel. They're preparing for you to fight back." The betrayal went so deep I felt it in my bones. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated plan to dismantle my life, take my money, and leave me with nothing. "What are my options?" I asked. Marcus smiled grimly. "Well, the way I see it, you have 2 choices. You can confront him now, file for divorce, and hope your lawyer can recover some of the stolen funds. Or you can beat them at their own game." I met his eyes. "Tell me how." Over the next hour, Marcus outlined a strategy that would have seemed impossibly devious if I hadn't been so angry. Document everything, continue gathering evidence, but most importantly, let David think his plan was working. Let him believe I was the naive wife who'd bought his story about the emotional coworker. "The more rope you give him, the more he'll hang himself," Marcus explained. "Right now, if you divorce, you'll get half of what he hasn't hidden. But if we can prove fraud, systematic theft, and intent to deceive in a divorce proceeding, you'll get everything. Plus, there could be criminal charges." It felt like playing with fire. But what choice did I have? I went home that night and smiled at my husband. I asked about his day. I laughed at his jokes. And when he said he had to work late on Thursday, I kissed his cheek and told him not to work too hard. Then I called Marcus and told him to be at the hotel on Thursday with cameras. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of my life. Every day, I had to pretend everything was normal while watching my husband systematically prepare to abandon me. Every smile felt like swallowing glass. Every "I love you" was a knife to the heart. But I was meticulous. With Marcus's help, I documented everything. I installed a keystroke logger on our home computer and discovered David had been researching asset protection in divorce and moving money offshore. He'd visited forums where men discussed hiding wealth from their wives, bookmarked articles about creating shell companies, even contacted 3 different attorneys about protecting assets in a high-conflict separation. I found emails. He'd created a separate account, but he'd foolishly checked it on our home computer once. The messages between David and Jennifer were damning. They called me the obstacle. They joked about my naivety. Jennifer wrote about the apartment they'd rented, how excited she was to finally start their real life together. But the email that broke something in me was from 3 weeks before I'd caught them at Marcello's. Just keep playing the devoted husband for a few more months, Jennifer had written. Once we hit $75,000 in the account, we'll have enough for the first year. Then you can tell her you're leaving, she'll be too shocked to get a good lawyer quickly, and we'll be settled before she knows what hit her. The fishing trip in Miami was perfect practice. She believed every word. This is going to be easier than we thought. David's response, you're brilliant. I can't wait to be done with this charade. She's so trusting it's almost boring. I love you. I read those words 5 times before the tears came. So trusting it's almost boring. 7 years of marriage, reduced to a con he was tired of performing. Marcus helped me create a comprehensive financial trail. We tracked every transfer, every hidden account, every undervalued asset. I opened my own bank account at a different bank and quietly began moving money into it, my paychecks, my small inheritance from my grandmother, anything that was solely mine. I consulted with Sarah Chen, the best divorce attorney in the city, and showed her everything. Her eyes widened as she reviewed the evidence. This is fraud, she said flatly. Financial abuse. And with the systematic nature of it, we can make a case for criminal charges, though most DAs won't pursue it if the money is returned in the divorce. But Rachel, this gives us enormous leverage. He's not just having an affair, he's been stealing from you and attempting to hide marital assets. Can we get it all back? I asked. All of it, plus damages, plus attorney's fees. And given his behavior, we can push for an extremely favorable settlement. She leaned forward. But you need to be patient. The longer he continues this pattern, the stronger our case. Can you hold out? I thought about the apartment lease that started in 3 weeks. About David's calendar, where he'd blocked out a Friday afternoon next month with the cryptic note "Our Talk." How much longer? I asked. Ideally? Let him make the first move. Let him be the one to ask for the divorce. Let him think he's in control right up until the moment we show him he never was. So I waited. And while I waited, I planned. I documented every late night, every unexplained expense, every lie. I set up a separate email account and sent myself daily updates with evidence attached, photographs, receipts, screenshots, audio recordings from a voice-activated recorder I'd hidden in David's car. I also did something that surprised me. I got stronger. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma. I reconnected with friends I drifted away from during my marriage. I even updated my resume and applied for a senior position at the university library that would come with a significant pay increase. You're different, David said one evening, studying me over dinner. Happier somehow. I smiled at him, this man I'd loved and trusted, this stranger who'd been plotting my downfall. I've just been doing some thinking about what I want from life. Feeling more like myself again. He looked relieved. Probably thought his guilty conscience had been paranoia. Probably believed that his plan was working so well I was actually becoming content. That's great, Ratch, he said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. You deserve to be happy. The irony was so thick I almost choked on it. The end came on a Friday afternoon, exactly 5 weeks after I'd caught David at Marcello's. He'd been increasingly distracted, taking more calls in another room, spending more time on his phone. The apartment lease had started 2 weeks ago. Marcus had confirmed that David and Jennifer had been furnishing it together. I was ready. David came home from work looking nervous. We had dinner, pasta, his favorite, and I chattered about my day at the library, the weather, a funny thing my coworker had said. Normal. Pleasant. Unsuspecting. After dinner, he poured himself a bourbon. Then another. Finally, he sat down across from me. Rachel, we need to talk. I looked up from my book, The Picture of Wifely Attention. Of course. What's wrong? He took a deep breath. I haven't been happy for a while now. I think we need to separate. I let the silence stretch, watching him squirm. What? David, I don't understand. Things have been good lately, haven't they? "It's not you," he said, the classic line. "I just need space to figure out what I want. I think we rushed into marriage and I just need time to think." "Is this about Jennifer?" I asked quietly. His face went white. "What?" "No, this has nothing to do with." "Because I know about the affair, David. I've known for weeks." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Rachel, I can explain. And I know about the money you've been stealing. The $47,000 you've transferred to Jennifer's account. The apartment you've rented together. The emails where you called me the obstacle and joked about how trusting and boring I am." David's face had gone from white to gray. How did you? Did you really think I was that stupid?" I asked, and my voice was calm, cold, nothing like the woman who'd cried herself to sleep for weeks. "Did you actually believe I wouldn't figure it out?" "Rachel, let me explain." I pulled out my phone and opened a folder. I have photographs of you and Jennifer at the hotel. 23 separate visits documented. I have records of every financial transaction, every hidden account, every undervalued asset. I have your emails, your text messages, your search history about hiding money and divorces. I have a voice recording of you and Jennifer discussing how to minimize what I'd get in the settlement. David had stood up, his face a mixture of shock and growing horror. "You've been spying on me?" "Gathering evidence," I corrected. "There's a difference." "And David?" "I've already filed for divorce." "You what?" I stood now too, facing him across the living room of the home we'd bought together, the life we'd built that had all been a lie. "I filed 3 days ago. You'll be served on Monday." "And David?" "Every piece of evidence I have, and there's quite a lot, will be presented to the judge. My lawyer assures me that given the systematic fraud, the hidden assets, and the documented affair, I'll be awarded not just half of everything, but compensation for the money you stole, damages for emotional distress, and full responsibility for all attorney's fees." "Rachel, you can't." "I already have." "The joint accounts?" "I had them frozen yesterday." "You'll find you can't access them." "The house?" "It's in both our names, but I've filed for exclusive occupancy pending the divorce." "You have until Sunday to collect your belongings and leave." David's shock was giving way to anger. "You vindictive." "Careful," I interrupted. "Everything you say right now is being recorded." I gestured to the device on the bookshelf. "And given that my lawyer is also considering whether to pursue criminal charges for fraud and theft, you might want to watch what you admit to." "Criminal charges?" "Rachel, this is insane. You're my wife." "Was your wife." "And you were my husband." "Was." Past tense. Because the man I married wouldn't have spent 8 months systematically stealing from me while planning to abandon me. The man I married wouldn't have called me boring and trusted to my face while plotting with his mistress behind my back. David seemed to deflate then, the fight going out of him. "How long have you known?" "Does it matter?" "I guess not." He sat down heavily. "What happens now?" "Now? You move into that apartment you've been furnishing with Jennifer. You explain to her that instead of starting your new life with $75,000 of stolen money, you'll be starting it in debt, because you'll be paying back every cent plus damages. You'll probably need to sell your car to cover the attorney's fees. And you'll do it knowing that everyone, your colleagues, your friends, your family, will know exactly what you did and what kind of person you really are." "You're going to destroy me," he whispered. "No, David. You destroyed yourself. I'm just making sure you face the consequences." He left that night, a small suitcase of essentials in hand, looking 10 years older than he had that morning. I watched from the window as he loaded his car, pulled out of the driveway for the last time. When the taillights disappeared around the corner, I finally let myself cry. But they weren't the broken tears I'd shed weeks ago. These were tears of release, of anger, of profound sadness for the marriage that had never been what I thought it was. Then I wiped my eyes, called my lawyer to confirm the next steps, and opened a bottle of wine. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. David had tried to fight at first, but when faced with the mountain of evidence, his attorney had advised him to settle. In the end, I got the house, my retirement accounts, the car, and $67,000 in compensation and damages. David had to liquidate his own retirement to pay it. Jennifer, I heard, had left him 2 weeks after he moved into the apartment. Apparently, a broke boyfriend facing potential criminal charges wasn't as appealing as the fantasy they'd been building. I got the promotion at the university library. I started dating someone new, a kind man who worked in IT and thought I was fascinating instead of boring. I joined a support group for people recovering from financial abuse and found a community of survivors who understood. And every Thursday evening, I went to Marcello's. Not to their corner booth, I'd never sit there again. But I went, ordered something delicious, and celebrated the woman I'd become, someone who trusted, yes, but who also verified. Someone who could be hurt but who refused to stay broken. Because the trap David had set for me, the lies, the theft, the carefully constructed deception, had sprung shut on him instead. And I had learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's justice.